Walk with me through the cellar door.
A storm is coming, Francis.
A portal to a more skeptical world.
Cellar Door Skeptics begins right now. Prepare for the revolution with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna.
It is March 8th, 2016. You are listening to Cellar Door Skeptics, being broadcast to you from Christopher Tanner's new house. Thank you so much for joining us for another awesome episode. We happen to have to take a week break, so thank you for bearing with us. I know we threw out a little short episode, but we had to take a quick break because I was in the midst of moving my home and trying to prepare my house. And honestly, if you could see it, and maybe someday we'll record video, you would even know now it's still not technically ready for podcasting.
Well, it's the 8th, man. It's voting day. It's not.
It is.
It's not put Tanner's house together day. It's okay. We got a podcast to record and we got voting to take care of. So today is super awesome, and we'll figure your house out later.
Yeah. And we took a week off because I had to take some time off to move and to paint and to get my old house, ready to move out of. And we had to spend some time with our families. And there's been a lot going on in both their personal lives, so we had to take a week off. So we're very sorry for that, but we're back now. And of course, there's two important topics that we got to talk about tonight. And we have other topics, but the most important one is International Women's Day. Today is officially International Women's Day. And in a little bit later tonight, Chris and I are going to get into the discussion about how we can be better allies as men and how we should all, as a community, be celebrating International Women's Day. But before we go too far into that, another monumental event happened. Last weekend, Chris and I went together to do something together outside of just podcasting, which is all we normally do together, and drink. We drink a little bit too.
We took other humans with us as well. It wasn't just the two of us bromancing it out. There were other people there to verify, my wife and daughter and your son and Joe. I don't know exactly what is he, a friend of yours, high school friend?
Yep, Joe is a friend I've known since high school. We're very close. We actually, ironically, we work together. He's a good friend of mine, and he's not real big into the politics game. So when he didn't have nothing to do that night, and we were talking about things that we could do, I was like, hey, I'm going to go to a rally. You want to come with me? And that's a rally you told me about, and it was one of those things where we were like, oh, hey, let's go to a rally. Let's do something different. Let's give you a different, unique experience that you probably never had before. And he was a little hesitant at first, and then he ended up biting into it towards the end and saying, "Oh yeah, I really want to go."
Did you bribe him with booze?
I did not. He had his own booze. I told him I wasn't drinking. It wasn't really a drinking event. I guess if my son hadn't been there, maybe I would have had a couple beers or something before we went in. But it was not an event I typically would drink at. And he did. He had a couple of beers before he went to get a little lubricated, and that's why he had to make an exit to one of the emergency bathrooms that he found on campus. But it was a unique experience. It's something that we hadn't been to. For those listening, we went to a Bernie Sanders rally, and we didn't go. I mean, we all know Hannah loves Bernie, that he's on his knees, that we guarantee you he voted for Bernie today in the primaries. We know for a fact Chris Hanna voted for Bernie in the primaries, and it's one of those things where I'm kind of still was on the fence. And I didn't know if a rally would really change my mind or where I should go with it. But, at some point we have to take that leap off the ledge. We have to make a decision. We have to garner who we're going to vote for, and we have to move on. And I've been listening to another podcast that my wife turned me on to called Dan Carlin. And he has two podcasts. He does a hardcore histories, and he also does a political one called Common Sense. And he's an independent. He's very moderate, middle of the road. And listening to him, there's a lot of knowledge I've gained. And that's kind of helped me decide, where do I want to fit into this political spectrum? Where should I vote for? And we can vote all we want establishment. We can vote all we want anti-establishment. And this is a topic that Chris and I will go into, and we touched a little bit on it with the superdelegates topic about 3 weeks ago. But what he brought to light was, where do we see this and where do we see the public? If we are just a voice that associates with whatever the general populace is, what's going to happen is we're going to see the same old, same old. We're going to see some more Trumps. We're going to see more Bernie Sanders. So we have to look and fit, where are we going to, as individuals, put ourselves out there? If I fall in the political spectrum closer to Bernie Sanders, why would I vote Hillary? And I think that's kind of a point that Chris and I have missed. I mean, Hanna just votes because he loves Bernie Sanders. For him, it's like the best thing ever. For me, I kind of have to float in the middle, because I have to look at, where are we going to be in 8 years? What is it going to project to us in 8 years? Or even just 4. I mean, there's no assumption for a repeat term like what Obama had. So, I mean, where are we going to be in 4 years? And I am just in favor of shaking up the system a little bit. Like, I've known about Bernie for a long time, which is one of the reasons why I'm so adamant about his presidency. And case in point, I would be the exact same amount of fervor if Elizabeth Warren was running. Like, Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders have been on my radar for a long time, and I was secretly, quietly, chewing on the doorknob of hoping that they would manage to pull something through. And just, he took the chance and ran with it, and I would love to see her get into the race or into more important politics in the future. But between the two of them, she is Democrat, but she's closer in my perspective to Bernie's independent stance, because she has been anti-establishment for a long time. So that is what I've been looking for, is the anti-establishment politician, and I finally got one in this election, or at least this primary. So, I mean, that's what matters the most to me. Yeah, and it's funny because Dan Carlin talks about this, and that's part of what I've been listening to, what I've been digesting lately, and I've been trying to figure out where does my voice fit, where do I want to be, and I if I'm a one-party issue voter, right, it would be pretty simple. I would pretty simply pick which one I wanted based on that one ideology, but I'm not. I don't vote just one idea. I do have a couple of fail-safe ideas. I mean, if a candidate is anti-LGBT or anti-women, I'm done with them. Yeah, I don't vote for them. I don't care who they are. You could be a Democrat and not want to support LGBT rights or women's rights, and I'm done with you. Yeah, no question. I won't. Well, yeah, we can't. I can't fit into that scheme of life anymore. But that's the big thing, is what Dan Carlin explained is he kind of talked about how, well, if you're going to vote anti-establishment, right, and anti-establishment doesn't get in, but we've had great success with 2 anti-establishment candidates, Trump and Bernie. But what happens if a establishment gets in, right? What if a Hillary or Rubio gets in? What's going to happen then? Are we going to have larger extremes? Are we going to have a greater extreme? Or not. Well, for the next round, so let's say that for the next Hillary or Rubio get their election, will there be super Trump and super Bernie? And so that'll be what's running against. So whoever won't be the incumbent, because usually an incumbent president is really never challenged by their party for any kind of primary. As far as I know, Obama wasn't even remotely challenged. And so, so I mean, that there, so what we would probably get is like zombie steroid Trump. I mean, because think about it, like, we have the right reaction to 8 years of a president with brown skin, so we see this, I mean, this fervent racism just showing itself, and I shudder to think of what would be considered acceptable for some of the more extreme Tea Party elements in a post Hillary or Bernie Sanders first round of presidency. I really don't know what we would get. Is that what Dan's kind of talking about? Yeah, I mean, he poses it both ways. He's a moderate. Okay, he plays both sides of this. That's cool. He doesn't come out and say I'm a Democrat or I'm a Republican. I'm an independent. You can tell by some of the points he makes, he's definitely on the more liberal basis of this. He floats to that liberal side. But what his whole point is that he goes, yeah, think about it. We could go either which way. If it happens that anti-establishment, which is what has been coming up in our generation, Chris, our generation is a larger anti-establishment generation than the generation before us. And he's saying is if anti-establishment is having good effects and it's doing really well, what do you think is going to happen? You're going to get more anti-establishment, which is going to be bad if we have people crazier than Trump. I mean, I don't know. I can't imagine crazier than Trump outside of Hitler, but we could have that. It could happen, And then, but you also got to look on the Democratic side is why are they rejecting Bernie? Why is all establishment party going towards Clinton? And I don't want to get into the money debate because I don't want to have that conversation right now because I know how you feel about it.
Oh yeah,
and I don't agree with you 100%. But the big part in this, and the biggest thing that we have to look at when we talk about these two parties is that, and Dan points this out very well, they aren't the parties of America. We don't have to have them, right? We don't need two parties. And what have I talked about since we started this podcast?
You would like
I'm
to be
anti-two-party system.
Yeah, definitely. I've always supported having more and more vocal parties. Like I would love the Tea Party to be separate from the Republican Party. I would love for the Socialist Party of America to have a socialist candidate that's viable. I would love the Green Party to have some weight. I would love for the Libertarian Party to not be intertwined into the Republican Party. So like I would love the fact that I'd love it if Bernie Sanders didn't feel the necessity to become or register as a Democrat in order to make a run for the presidency, even though he spent the last 30 years as an independent. Like those kinds of commiserations that you have to make, I think hurt the kind of variety that America, we really do have. I mean, we are a very pluralistic nation if you look at the people, but if you look at our ruling class, depending on what your perspectives are, the oligarchy or whatever, we don't have a lot of variety there, a lot of diversity. And that's the anti-establishment that I think a lot of the millennials are feeling, is like we see a lot more in the world because we have this broad connection to the world with our communication and the internet. I think we just see more diversity than what we're getting from our leaders, and we just want more. And so I think that might be just like a knee-jerk reaction, because let's face it, the public is not always the most logical creature out there. The majority is not the majority opinion is not always the best one. It's one of the reasons why we have a democratic republic, is to protect the minority voice. But I do think that the millennials' perspective in this it's going to make a big difference, and hopefully maybe this will show that we need to diversify our politics as opposed to keep clamping down on one or two binary suggestions.
Yep. And I'll be honest, that's actually what funneled my decision, right? That's why I chose Bernie over Hillary, is because for me, what have I been my whole life? I've always been anti-establishment. Ever since I left religion, I was anti-establishment. And the more I learn, the more anti-establishment I become, the more anarchist, I guess, if you want to call it that, I become. And maybe it's because I don't have as much to lose. I have a house, right? Could we lose the house? Yes. But I'm not a millionaire. I'm not even really, I live paycheck to paycheck, I'm not rich. We don't make any money off this, So there's, for us, for me at least, I have less to lose. And, it's kind of revolutionary for my son. One of the discussions after the rally that my son had is he kind of was like, well, because I don't like the rallies because it reminds me of church. And I still have negative feelings towards that church and that church aspect. And so what happened is my son was like, yeah, look at all those people. It's kind of like going to church, Dad. And I was like, well, you're right, it is. I said, but do you understand there's a difference between people in church? Those people aren't looking for revolution. Those people just don't want their ways to change. They want to feel comforted by like-minded people. The people here at the Bernie rally are different because they're actually looking. They're going out. They want to see something different from what the fuck they've seen for hundreds of years. I guess it's not really hundreds of years because, Democrats are only Democrats that we know them as of the 50s. But we're looking at it differently. And so my son and I had this conversation where I explained to him why people are getting upset. People are getting upset because black people are being murdered in a different proportion over white people. People are going to jail over stupid marijuana offenses that, are ruining their whole fucking lives. People are watching the Democratic Party side almost next to the Republican Party, and they're seeing such slow change that at some point they want to get off their asses and they want something fucking different. And so that's why I explained to him why these people are so fucking excited to see Bernie, is because at some point, even if it upsets the apple cart, they have nothing left to lose. That gap has been so wide, and when you look at Hillary, she's got way too much to lose.
Yeah,
for her to go anti-establishment.
This has always been, as was the campaign when she ran against Obama. It was her campaign to lose, and Obama played some of the same tricks that actually Bernie is playing some of the same tricks that Obama played he distanced himself from the establishment. And it worked out quite well for him. And so we've gone a little bit further on to that anti-establishment, especially in this candidacy, or at least in this primary run. Like I really like what you mentioned for people not really having much to lose and seeing the growth of inequality in our lifetimes. And I don't know if it's an increase in the specific statistics or if it's more the media and we see more of it, but the attacks against just minorities and brown people in general with the authority, these kinds of things, we're seeing this, and the conservative angle is kind of like, so that's really all I get. There's not a lot of uproar, and we need those candidates that are really willing to push that. But I also pair that with the economic issues, is the major distinctions, and Bernie's picking the economic issues as his major standalone place. And so, like you said, you didn't want to run on the money debate or whatever, but like I see a lot of people who are really, really trying to fuss, because when we went to the rally, we went to Grand Valley State University in Allegan, or is it Allendale?
It was Allendale.
Allendale. So if anybody looking it up, or Grand Valley State, it's a great university. But we went to their rally, and I will say the majority of the people there they were millennials by far. Mostly, I'm gonna say there was a lot of them that were students. There was a lot of youth in the crowd, but there was a nice amount of diversity. I was happy to see. I've had accusations in recently of just like the Bernie Sanders winning the white vote, the young white vote, and when I look at the rallies, and I see the people who are supporting this and the people who are in the groups on Facebook, I do see some diversity. Yes, it's like the atheist community a little bit. There's a lot of white males in there, but I really hope that people can see a little bit past that white vote, that we're winning. Bernie Sanders wins the New England stuff, but the Southern vote stuff goes to Hillary. And I mean, this rally was a nice, calm environment where people were, supporting him, but nothing like some of the extreme angles of rage and frustration that you get at the Trump rallies that you see in some of these videos. So it was just a great experience overall. And my daughter at 5 months got her first political rally under her belt. The same with father here, because I waited 31 years before I went to a political rally, because this is the first time I've ever sent a candidate that really meant anything to me. So it was a great takeaway experience, and I will be probably doing more political stuff, even if this candidacy and this presidency doesn't go the way I expect it, because it's really rewarding being involved in a political process.
Yep. And that's part of the reason why we do this show here. We do this podcast for a reason. We enjoy the political process, and we want to have that conversation. And I think the biggest point that we got to bring home here, the biggest idea is that you have to feel comfortable with who you are and where you're going to vote. I can't feel scared because I'm not going to vote for Hillary, in the primary. I shouldn't have to feel scared because I'm going to be an anti-feminist, because that's not what that is. To me, I have to fit where my vote lies with my personality, and my personality is anti-establishment. I'm anti-establishment. That's just it's in my DNA, for fuck's sake. I mean, ask my parents, for Christ's sake. They would tell you. My dad and I used to argue over why I hated the Vietnam War and why I hate all wars and why I think that all politics were stupid growing up as a kid, because I couldn't stand the rhetoric. And so the one thing that I took away from the rally was that I can feel comfortable admitting and saying, you know what, I'm going to take a stand. I am going to come out and I'm going to say I'm an anti-establishment individual. Now, that doesn't mean I'm not going to vote for Hillary if she gets the nomination. And I'm not going to go bitch
I'm in
about
the same
it.
boat.
We're not going to have a show where we go, well, she shouldn't have got it because of this, and that. We're not going to do that show. I don't care.
No.
If she gets it. And that's another point when we talked about superdelegates and how superdelegates are there to balance out everything. They're there for a fucking reason to balance out this stuff, because without them, your establishment would never no longer be an establishment. We wouldn't have that, and it would all crumble and fall apart.
The only thing I think the superdelegates are useful for is like what I said a little while ago, like the mob justice, the majority rule. There is something I found myself there was an argument that I was in, and I was in the middle of writing something, and I realized that I was kind of punching at my own perspective, that the superdelegates are there. I was writing that they're there to kind of balance out the grassroots movement, But then I was like, well, what if there's a grassroots movement that is inherently bad and it's just mob justice? People out there like the Trump mob justice where they're out there trying to get blood for blood and they're really trying, like that's a bad grassroots movement. That's a bad anti-establishment movement. And so the superdelegates maybe can help balance that out with people who are politicians and who deal with this on a regular basis. So I understand it. I don't like it in some cases. It's not always going to go the way I want, but it does have a purpose. And so I don't know. I'm not completely against it. I understand its perspective. I just hope that it's used fairly, I guess, is my hope.
Yeah. And so I think as we wrap this segment up, you have to feel comfortable with who you're going to be. And I think on our show, that's kind of what we strive to be. We'll always be skeptical. You saw anybody that's listened to this show has seen my point of view on who I'm going to vote for, move back and forth. And it's not been something where I'm specifically only voting for Bernie. You know, I've challenged Hanna on many occasions.
And I've seen my perspectives change a few times on this, and I am much more comfortable saying that I will still support the Democratic Party, even if Bernie loses, because the horrors that I see on the other side of the aisle, I can make some demands of Hillary when she's president and say, hey, you should still do this, as opposed to just being terrified of what the other opportunity or the other option is.
Yeah. And I think if you fit into the anti-establishment, as we leave this segment, the big thing that I see coming out of this is it's opening the door for more candidates, whether good, bad, or indifferent. And I don't like the Trump supporters. I don't. I have a really hard time with the Trump aspect, but to a point, it makes great fodder for the show. I mean, we're going to have 6 months if he gets the nomination to make fun of him and to have a conversation. And we're going to get 6 months if he runs as an independent. So we're going to get this 6 months, I think. I have a 90% probability we'll get to make fun of Trump. But the biggest point for me is that if we can break apart this establishment system, that establishment believes that they fucking have to have just the two parties because they believe they're God's gift to America. And I'm saying is no. I welcome multiple parties.
Diversity.
This segment was brought to you by Alan. Make sure you stick around because when we come back from this segment, we're going to talk a little bit about International Women's Day, evolution, and food, which two of my favorite subjects. And then we'll close with Apple.
It's going to be fun.
Make sure you stick around because we'll be right back, everyone.
Hello, I'm Miss B. Haven.
I'm Demanda Wright.
And we're
promoting secular feminism. And you're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics.
Like what you're hearing? Check out more Cellar Door Skeptics every week right here on Spreaker and iTunes. Make sure you come back and check out new episodes with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna. And always, remember, prepare for the revolution.
Hi, I'm Ron Reagan, an unabashed atheist, and I'm alarmed by the intrusions of religion into our secular government. That's why I'm asking you to support the Freedom from Religion Foundation, the nation's largest and most effective association of atheists and agnostics, working to keep state and church separate, just like our founding fathers intended. Please support the Freedom from Religion Foundation. Ron Reagan, lifelong atheist, not afraid of burning in hell.
Hi, this is Sharon Bush, newest and most badass host of the Unbuckling the Bible Belt podcast, and you're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics.
Now, back to the show.
Welcome back to Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you all for sticking around through this amazing episode, which I tell you about every time because it's an amazing episode. Thank you. If you want to help us out, just as you heard, go over to Patreon, support us on Patreon, help us take this show to the next level. Maybe we can even buy Chris Hanna, a new haircut, because sometimes his hair just looks like he cut it at home.
I do cut it at home, but I would rather have a new microphone before I lean to the sensei's ways of chopping hair in a public place.
So, but anyway, so the next segment that we wanted to talk about is something that came up that I did last year was International Women's Day. And last year I got a bunch of different people that I admired together to have a short conversation to introduce them. And I have that recorded somewhere. If people would like to hear that, I would be more than happy to post it. You'll have to hear my old co-host, Johnny Brotherton. But he was very scripted for this episode because I wrote the script and the questions and directed the whole thing. So, but I did it last year. I did this episode where I talked to a bunch of different people about International Women's Day. For tonight, I didn't have as much time to prepare, unfortunately. That's something I would love to do. Love to have that again. I didn't have the amount of time that I needed to do it. So what I did instead is I prepared a little bit and went onto their website and talked and want to talk a little bit about what their theme was this year. A pledge for parity. And the definition for this, which is what their theme is this year, is a state or condition of being equal, especially regarding status or pay. And I think we talked a little bit earlier about who we voted for. And I think that we see both candidates on our side of the fence actually advocating for equal pay for genders.
Yeah, definitely.
And I know for a fact, what's that?
I said definitely. That's one of the things that I don't see a lot of difference in equal pay for men, women, and minorities, and any other division you can think of from the Democrats. It's more policy and philosophy. But when it comes to people being equal, the Democratic Party has the head and shoulders lead in this case. Both Bernie and Hillary, I mean, there's no question they support getting people the money they deserve.
And I think that's good because that ties into this segment. Because if you haven't heard what International Women's Day is, I'll read a little bit about what it is. And you can go to their website, internationalwomensday.com, and you can find all this information as well as the links, which will be posted in the description. But International Women's Day on March 8th is a global day celebrating the social, economic, cultural, and political achievements of women. The day also marks a call to action for accelerating gender parity. International Women's Day has been observed since the 1900s, a time of great expansion and turbulence in the industrial world, and it saw a booming population growth and the rise of radical ideologies. International Women's Day is a collective day of global celebration and a call for gender parity. No one in the government, NGO, charity, corporation, academic institution, women's network, or media hub is solely responsible for this day, but many organizations support it and they declare an annual theme. The story of women's struggles for equality belongs to no single feminist nor to any one organization, but to a collective effort of all who care about human rights. That is Gloria Steinem.
Yep.
International Women's Day is about celebration, reflection, advocacy, and action. This year, International Women's Day has basically asked us to take a pledge for parity. And in a few minutes, we'll get into what the different options for the pledges are. But I feel this is an important day because I think we have all these national holidays, right? We have all these different things. We celebrate figures within the movement. But I do think that we're missing the movement for equality with women. I don't see. Do we have a national day? I mean, we have Columbus Day, which I bitched about before, where fucking some man came overseas and murdered a bunch of fucking natives.
We already replaced that one with the Asian internment camp holiday, where we were for Asian awareness or the Japanese awareness. And we even talked about the Mexican deportation stuff at that point. But there's definitely there deserves to be a, if anything, just a remembrance of women's the big things for women's, like when they gained the right for suffrage and stuff. Like I know it's part of, I guess, the typical white American history that has the whitewash portion of it, but there really isn't a lot of emphasis on the women's rights, as far as I'm concerned, in the United States and even really in the world. So I have no question, no issue with that being more of a thing for like the Black History Month kind of stuff. Like women should get some more time for recommendations and for just awareness like this. Do you think the Breast Cancer Awareness Month helps for this at all? Because That's kind of smeary a little bit. I don't know. Boob Awareness Month. I have a little bit of a about that one. It's not really about women's awareness as much.
It's more about cancer awareness, and it's just a different form of cancer.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good first step, but I don't see it as the be all end all.
No.
I mean, I would like to see International Women's Day be declared a national holiday. I think that's to me that's where we should be moving towards.
I'd support it.
And if they would like to pick a different day, I guess that's fine. But, there needs to be some sort of actual national holiday where we could take a day off, where the banks close. Because the banks close, again, for some of these other crazy holidays that I don't even adhere to. But, like Columbus Day. But we don't have a women's holiday. We don't have any of that. And that troubles me. And that kind of makes me, when I look at the politics, and look at the scheme of who I'm going to vote for, where we're going to go in the future, is somebody has to be championing this process. Somebody has to be putting a voice out there and allowing others to filter their voice into the mix. The one thing that we talk about, right, when we talk about International Women's Day is why we still need it. Women still contribute to the social, economical, cultural, and political achievements, but they're not as celebrated. They may be more celebrated than they were before, but they're not as celebrated as they should be. The World Economic Forum predicted in 2014 that it would take until 2095 to achieve global gender partility, or however you say that word, partiality. 2095. Can you fucking imagine how that?
I can believe it.
Chris, you and I won't be alive in 2095.
I don't know.
Isn't that ridiculous?
I don't know. We might be talking to a transhumanist in the near future on our show that might disagree with that. But yeah, no, I definitely, it doesn't surprise me that we're thinking that genuine women's or gender equality is so far away for the rest of the world. When I look at the Southern Hemisphere and kind of the havoc that the Northern Hemisphere has wreaked upon the Southern Hemisphere, and some of the recent trends with the very patriarchal religions, and especially in Islam, we're seeing some very, very dangerous things and ways of treating women for that are nationally sanctioned. Like, these are governments that are allowing certain things. So it doesn't surprise me that we're still a long, long ways away. In our country, we've made a lot of growth, but that one or two countries in the Northern Hemisphere do not make up for a lot of the horrible things that still happen globally.
And so they asked the website, International Women's Day, they asked us if we could go ahead and celebrate with them. And the way they want us to celebrate it is by taking the pledge of parity. And they said everybody can do this. Men, women, anybody can achieve or help achieve this goal. So we each need to become leaders. We each need to become outspoken activists for women's rights. And so let's talk about the pledges. I think that was an interesting topic. And again, this is something that I find personally interesting, something that I would like to see. I can't imagine 2095 before women see equality. To me, that befuddles me in this day and age that we should fucking have to wait that long. But if that's what they're predicting, then our goal should be to reduce that in half. I'd like to see it before I fucking die. That would be, what I would like. So if you're listening to this in the future here, and Chris have already passed on, hopefully we've seen gender parity.
We've had the Pope. We've had all kinds of famous people that were going to listen to our show. Now people in the future are going to be listening to our show.
We just need people in the future.
Like 30 years.
So they say to take the pledge, right? They want to talk about taking the pledge. So the first one is help women and girls achieve their ambitions. The most important determinant of a country's competitiveness is its human talent via the skills and productivity of the workforce. Organizations must illuminate the path to leadership, showing women the career and advancement opportunities that match their skills and professional objectives, and will also provide the experiences necessary to fulfill their potential. Individuals can commit to advocating for themselves and, when appropriate, becoming effective role models and sponsors of women to help them achieve their goals.
This is a major area, something that I really, really, really support. As an engineer, mechanical engineer, someone who went through the sciences and the math in college, I tell you what, very, very few women in those fields. I don't know why, because the few women that were in those fields did exceptionally well. They were incredibly intelligent. I don't know if it's discouraged, thinking that maybe that kind of field, the math and sciences, are just really a male gender type speciality.
Well, it's some of it's discrimination.
It could be.
Would you want to walk into work
No.
every day where somebody ridiculed you?
No.
Where somebody thought you were less than them?
Or if they treated you like a sex object. Because
or if they treated you like a sex object.
So I mean, but I was thinking more along the lines of women growing up when they're young girls, like they're discouraged from the maths and the sciences, and I that's the only thing I can think of. That's the only place I can think that it goes is that they're discouraged from those types of fields, because the few who made it and went through the engineering program, they actually did better than I did. They had better GPAs. They were amazing, great students, great classmates, great engineering teammates and everything, and there was just too few, and it's something that I still see in the field now, working in the field. I would love to have more diversity when it comes to gender in manufacturing, but in the higher end, not just workers. There's a lot of women workers. The women workers on the workforce do really well, but as far as the white collar jobs, the engineering jobs, the administrative jobs, it's still very male dominated. And this kind of pledge here, this would make a huge difference as to helping diversify that workforce.
So the second pledge that they say you can take, and you could do more than one, or you can go on their website. You can actually pledge right on their website. But they have the second one that comes up is called Challenge Conscious and Unconscious Bias. And we've talked about this on the show, and they use an example of a website called understandingprejudice.org. And it's a website that students, teachers, others interested in the cause can use. But what they talk about is studies show that gender-balanced organizations and teams deliver stronger results, and that inclusive societies are more progressive. But ingrained bias shows the progress of equality. Organizations must build these cultures where all people feel valued and included and can contribute fully to their capabilities. Individuals can commit for this pledge to learning about their own biases, adjusting their behavior as needed, and welcoming different experiences and points of view. And I think this one, if anybody listening to this is like, well, I don't know about the other ones, I don't know how I can affect, this is an easy one, right? This is easy. Learn about your bias. Mm-hmm. Learn about how you talk in the atmosphere of the workplace, of your church, if you go to church, of your social group. Look how you talk. And it's funny, I'll tell a little story real quick here. At my work, I call people out. I do. I don't. Really? I don't like sexism, and I can't stand some of the things that people say. But the funny thing, Chris, is that people make fun of me now. But at least they're recognizing the fact that I'm going to call them out on what they say. They're like, Chris Tanner don't like it, so I can't say these things. He might turn me into HR. And it's like, well, fuck you, dude. Fuck you for saying bullshit. If you didn't say that, I wouldn't call you out on it. If you want to think it, fine. I can't change
that. If
you're
going to say something that could get you reported to HR, that in and of itself should be a very clear indicator that whatever you're about to say probably shouldn't be said. Like, if social norms declare that that's probably a douchebaggy thing to say, you probably shouldn't say it. And having that filter in there, just your existence is a benefit to society. This one's a great one to challenge yourself. I find myself trying to challenge myself all the time. Try to make yourself uncomfortable, because one thing you're going to do when you're challenged like this is learn. You're going to learn more about who you are, where you are.
You're going to retrain your rats.
Oh, man. Yeah. Man, we are just loading up with our past inside jokes here today.
Yeah. So if nothing else, take the challenge to challenge your conscious and unconscious bias. Number 3 is call for gender-balanced leadership. Companies with women board members outperform in return on equity, net income growth, and price-to-book value, as well as a host of non-financial measures. Organizations must ensure women are exposed to strategic operations and functions to gain the experience needed for senior-level positions, and that they can set measurable targets for appointing women to leadership. Individuals can show potential or current employers that they value and expect gender-balanced leadership. They should seek out leadership, sponsorship, and mentor programs.
This is like the grassroots movement for politics. Like, everyone needs to kind of pull everybody together. I mean, it's a community thing. And I think the more the awareness that we get, the more people who are willing to challenge themselves, you'll see this kind of stuff naturally grow out of that. This is an awesome idea that we, that the people in charge should have some gender diversity. Why is that? Why is that a surprise? I can't think of any reason why that would not help performance, different perspectives and stuff. It sounds awesome.
Yep. And there's a great brochure from EY called Building a Better World. And they talk about diversity drives diversity from the boardroom to the C-suite. And I again, all the links will be in the descriptions. I may even just post this our cheat sheet that I have.
I really would.
Maybe we should just post this as a blog article. Maybe that's what we'll do, because they have all the links in it and everything, and I made it look super fancy just for Hannah to stare at. So make sure, if you're interested in that one, go to their website. Again, all of these links are on their website. I literally just data mined their website for this information and consolidated it for our show.
Steve.
But number 4 is the number 4 pledge is called Value Women and Men's Contributions Equally. Raising the female labor force participation rate to match that of men will have a positive impact on GDP in both developed and developing countries. Organizations must ensure all their talent possesses are equal, fair, and that they are furthering their gender parity and diversity objectives. Individuals can seek out perspectives different from their own, prioritize building diverse teams, and engage in mixed networks that build trusting relationships.
Well, this one for sure is going to see a much bigger and faster increase in less diversified nations, third world nations, southern hemisphere nations. When we're seeing, like in the United States, we talk about a 77% to the dollar difference between females to males, but we're talking about countries where I bet you it's less than 10-15%. I mean, really, really low amounts. So that's going to be a huge increase, and we probably saw a quick, sharp increase in the United States history. But here, it's going to be a little more work to get that up to that equality level. But we can really, really help women abroad by using this technique here by far.
The last pledge that they put in there is called Create Inclusive and Flexible Cultures. After competitive pay and benefits, workers in 8 countries rank working flexibility and still being on track for promotion as what they value the most in a potential job. Organizations should recognize that lines between career and personal lives are becoming more fluid. They should create progressive policies like flexible working that allow everybody, regardless of age, gender, rank, and geography, to manage their personal and professional lives and realize their ambition. Individuals can create trusting, team-oriented work environments by encouraging flexible working, supportive choices around times, places, and ways to get things done. There's a great article, again, from EY called Inclusive Leadership, Accelerating Progress in Gender Equality from the Inside Out.
This is awesome. Period. I have no other comments. This is an absolutely great idea. Working on that competitive nature in organizations, we're gonna be a little bit behind when it comes to like politics, to the changes and the speeds and the rapid increases in communication and in technology. And so we're going to be a little bit behind it, but we should kind of aim to keep up with it. And this kind of stuff here, finding the perfect blend between work and play. This is something that I have a lot of difficulty with in my life when it comes to this podcasting stuff. This stuff bleeds into my daily work, and it actually cuts down on some of my productivity. And so I found ways to try to reduce that. And then also into my personal life when it comes to working on quotes and stuff late at night with my job. You got to find a happy space where everybody can be as productive as possible. And there's no difference between women getting into the workforce as well. They should obviously be subject to the same kinds of protections from you want to get the same pay as men. Well, you have to work 3 times as much. Well, that's unfair. And so this is a nice blend that we have to be conscious of how much we force people to work and create a healthy environment when it comes to all of the different levels of I guess the workforce. And
as we leave this segment, internationalwomensday.com The website says this. They say, globally, with individuals pledging to move from talk to purposeful action, and with men and women joining forces, we can collectively help women advance equal to their numbers and realize the limitless potential they offer economies all over the world. We have urgent work to do. Are you ready to accelerate gender parity? All the links will be in the description. Make sure you check out International Women's Day website. Support, take one of the pledges. Make that a goal this year. Help advance the human race. We'll be right back with more Cellar Door Skeptics.
Hey, what's up? I'm Steve Hayes.
And I'm Dave Curry.
And we're from Propcast.
And you're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics
on the Fox News Network.
They're not affiliated with Fox.
Everyone's a Fox affiliate.
If you guys like what you're hearing on Cellar Door Skeptics, please consider sponsoring us on our Patreon page. Our goal at Cellar Door Skeptics is to help promote more science, skepticism, secularism, and humanism in the world. We want to create better content for our podcast and for you, the listener, all while trying to help promote local activism. We're going to strive to make better podcasts, and I'll tell you what, we're even going to contribute some of the proceeds to charity. So please join us over at Patreon.com/Cellar Door Skeptics to make sure that you sponsor us for as little as $1 an episode. Thank you guys so much, and prepare for the revolution.
Looking for something new and exciting, or maybe just a change from the old Atheist Show format? Cellar Door Skeptics Podcast provides listeners with hours of enjoyment each week on Spreaker and iTunes. Check us out as we talk politics, religion, science, reviews of books and music, along with the occasional interview just for a twist. Join Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern as they bring fresh content to you. Walk with us through the cellar door as we help you prepare for the revolution. You can find us on Spreaker, iTunes, YouTube, and even on Facebook.
Hey, my name is Jeremiah. And this is David from the God Theory Podcast. And you're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics. Prepare for the revolution.
Now, back to the show.
And we are back with more Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you so much for sticking around through the last couple of segments. We talked about International Women's Day. We talked about Bernie Sanders' rally that Chris Hanna and I went to. But now we get to talk about evolution and food. Two awesome things. If you've ever seen me, you know I like food. And if you've ever listened to me for the last 2 years, you know I like evolution. So Chris, I don't know where you came up with this idea, but this book actually was a really ingenious. This came up on a podcast I actually listened to with my wife, ironically enough. When we were, I don't know where we were headed to, but her and I were headed out somewhere. And she throws her podcast on the radio all the time because she doesn't like any of the radio music. And this book actually came up. And I don't remember if I told you to research this book or if this is something you came up with on your own and we just both kind of had the same ideas.
Basically, where I got this, I was just flipping through Netflix, and Netflix documentaries have been surprisingly really, really good. The Chef's Table. I'm not a foodie, but I really like learning about how we cook and how we learn about that kind of stuff, and just how to be better and enjoy better food. And this documentary on Netflix called Cooked, and there's a writer, Michael Pollan, or I believe it's Pollan. I'm not 100% positive on exactly how you say his last name, but it's Pollan. So Poland. But either way, he has been recognized as one of the most influential writers, at least food critics out there in the world. And he basically starts off this documentary, and there's 4 sections to his book, and there's earth, fire, water, and wind. And that it's a really cool way that he breaks down his book, and this is how he basically breaks into all the different ways of cooking, and fire is the very first one, and it includes the main author, the main book that I wanted to talk to talk about tonight, Richard Wrangham of Harvard University, and his book is called Catching Fire: How Cooking Made Us Human, and that's what caught me by surprise. They mention it in the show on Netflix, Cooked, so you can check that out. It's the very first episode, and but this book here is what I dove into a little bit further. And Wrangham is obviously, like I said, a Harvard writer, and he basically makes the case that humans' ability to harness fire and cook food is what allowed our brain to grow and our digestive tract to shrink, and then giving a rise to Homo erectus some 1.8 million years ago. And I had no idea that this is what some anthropologists and some of the paleontologists and some of the other, the diversity of human evolution, this is a major step, and this is a decent argument. And as I've got further onto it, I fell in love with it. You love food. I mean, you gotta be loving this already too. I mean, did this catch you by surprise when you listened to it on that podcast, or is this something you already suspected?
No, it did kind of catch me by surprise. It was not something I had expected. I guess I never thought about the evolution of cooking, and it never really came up. I think there was a Dogma Debate episode I listened to about 3 years ago when I first came out as an atheist, where Rachel Nannon Brown did something about the evolution of food and whether we should be meat eaters or not, right? So she dived into some of that a little bit, but I kind of just dropped it after that. I just take for granted that the foods I enjoy and how I can expand my palate. I've never looked at the evolution behind it, but it only makes sense. And it once I started looking into it, then it's kind of like, well, this is actually extremely interesting. And then you brought up the segment, and then it's like, well, yeah, hey, we should definitely do this.
Well, it's pretty cool that it's like food. The way we cook food, the fire itself, is kind of what helped drive us into being human. The argument is basically that cooking, the harnessing of fire, cooking, it makes eating faster and easier. Now, it brings more caloric benefit from food. So what they're saying is that vitally important, supporting these calories, they support the outsides of the human brain, so it consumes almost a quarter of the body's energy. So what we've done with cooking is we've freed humans from having to spend half the day chewing and digesting raw food. And this is something that's still done by most of our primate relatives. And so we can see this. They have really big, strong jaws. They have really big, heavy gut to handle breaking down all this raw food. So early humans devoted themselves to more productive activities instead of chewing this fibrous food, and it allowed for the development of tools, agriculture, social networks. So that also cooked food is also softer, meaning the body uses less energy in digesting it. So if you've ever heard that, like people talk about if you're on a diet, you want to lose weight, eat celery, because celery takes 100 calories to break down, but you only get 80. I'm using a relative terms and not the specific caloric intake. I am not a dietitian, but like that's basically you're getting a negative feedback. You're getting a negative input for your output of energy. And so this is the kind of stuff that we were fighting in evolutionary standards, is that, well, we need something to get calories faster and easier. And so this physical remnant of fire, they tend to degrade rapidly. And so archaeologists have never really had the evidence of what this is the big difference maker. And so we've only been able to date back to cooking about 800,000 years. But biological evidence, which shows that around 1.8 million years ago, Homo erectus arose with larger brains. This is if you're familiar with evolution, the humanoid species had a huge growth in our brain mass, and that's one of the things that allowed us to become human. Homo erectus rose, like I said, with the large brain and then smaller guts and smaller jaws and smaller teeth. So these changes would be consistent with food that's easier to chew, easier to digest, and it has better dietary strength. And so this is the main argument for his perspective. And this is a direct quote from his book. It says, "Cooking is what made us human. And the most logical explanation for the advances in brain, body size, and of our ape ancestors," Wrangham says, "it's hard to imagine the leap from Homo erectus without cooking's nutritional benefits." So this is kind of like a linchpin. This is the little thing that gave a little bit of a boost, a little bit of an effective edge over our competitors. The whole point of the natural selection process is whoever has the best advantage is the one that's going to continue on. So
yeah, and it's not even that we have just bigger brains. I mean, the bigger brains did help. There's a bit more cognitive ability that's able to function within a larger brain, but it provided more time for them to do other things. You know, if you spent 3 hours hunting and then, you know, only had to spend a half hour cooking and a half hour eating, that's amazing compared to having to sit there for 5 hours chewing goddamn vegetation. You know, I mean, can you imagine eating a salad without even just a tiny bit of salad dressing? Like, that's what it would be like. You'd be like, oh, I gotta chew this goddamn radish for like fucking 10 minutes here. It's like watching my kids at the dinner table when I won't let them put, you know, fancy dressings on their vegetables all the time. You know, like my kids will sit there like, I don't like broccoli, Dad. And I'll be like, well, you're not going to dip it in ketchup and you're not going to dip it in fucking, you know, mayonnaise or something. You're going to chew it and eat it. And my kids will sit there. I did my son, when he was 3 years old, literally would sit there for an hour and chew green beans. Dead serious. You could feed him water, you could give him pop, you could give him ketchup, you could give him anything, and he hated green beans so much that he would literally just sit there and chew and chew and chew. And that must be like what our ancestors had to go through. Is they would go through and they would spend hours chewing.
Well, they'd be chewing things like bark and raw meat, tendons and sinew. Like, these things are tough, man. It's really, really hard. Like, fiber itself in plant tissue, our body doesn't break it down. Like, we cannot digest it. It's one of the reasons why they say, like, oh, you should increase your fiber intake because it'll help keep you regular and help keep things moving. Well, there's a reason, because it doesn't break down in our bodies. But one of the cool things about this is in the show they talk about it. It's like, okay, well, how do humans harness fire? And my first thought was like, well, that's a good question because it's a naturally occurring thing. So what they suspect and what they kind of postulate in the documentary is that humanoids, you know, the Homo erectus, or its very short before predecessor, they went into an area. Let's say a forest fire had come through and had burned up a certain area, and they find animals. They find creatures that are cooked. They're burned to death in the fire. And scavengers, humans they're hunters, scavengers. And so it was like, this is something, it's meat, it's good, we'll give it a try. And they find that it's good, it's easy to digest, and it's a really, really good source of energy. And so they associate the two. Like, if fire equals easy food. And so they somehow manage to harness fire to make fire in their own little places. Well, when they do hunt something, they kill something, throw it in the fire because it makes it easier to eat. These are very, very, very small processes and small steps that happen, but like, there's a logical step here that naturally could have occurred over, you know, the people who got this food, who were able to eat more, naturally had more calories. They had a better chance of surviving, let's say, drought or famine or anything else that happened. These are little advantages that keep, you know, the natural selection process going. And then and there's also other basically observations or postulations that people have said that the meat eating is what gave rise to the Homo erectus. But these theories don't mesh with the species' smaller jaws and teeth. What we're talking about, it's easier to eat this stuff. Because if you look at our predecessors and our cousins, they had these really big, strong, powerful jaws and these really big, powerful guts. Well, they say that with the cooking, that would allow for smaller teeth and smaller guts because we don't have to work so hard. But instead, in the book, they claim that meat eating enabled the shift from, I'm gonna give this a shot here. This is Australopithecines, I believe it is, and into Homo habilis. This was a species that arose, it's about the size of a chimp with a little bit bigger brain, more than 500,000 years earlier than the 1.8 million years when the Homo erectus came up. And so Ringham says the adoption of cooking has made the profound impact on human families and relationships, like we talked about, having more time. It's making the hearth and the home center to humanity and driving home humans to pair mating and perhaps even more traditional male-female household roles. And this is kind of like I have an empathy and a grief morality that I kind of have, you know, theories and thoughts, and that's kind of where I think that our morality derives from. And so these are cool little tie-ins from some of this stuff, but I can really see cooking helping with that community world. And they make a little bit of a mention in it here. When you were listening into the podcast that had mentioned this stuff, did they specifically go into like, okay, this is just the evolution, or did they ever go into the socialistic and like maybe anthropological talk about what this cooking stuff did to help out humanity?
No, they only went into the evolutionary side of what it did for our bodies and how our bodies were able to process things differently and how we're able to store fats in a different manner and how our brains grew compared to other species, and so that's what we had, that's what I got out of it.
Scientific. Very scientific. It didn't. So the one thing that I liked about this part of the book is that it kind of adds a little bit other branches to it. I mean, the human relationship in the human community is a really important thing as far as our evolution is concerned, and I think it's actually is a big part of why and who we are at what we are as well. But this is a section that I have a disclaimer on. It's that these are the author's remarks, not our beliefs, and I say this with respect to International Women's Day and stuff. When I read this, I was like, ooh, I don't know, and so. Really, what it is I'm serious. This is a state of nature we're talking about. And the first human social groups, they're not modern male-female roles, and equality was not really considered possible due to different physiological differences between the male and female. We're talking, just out of the apes here. So it said that cooking permitted a new distribution of labor between men and women. It said men entered into relationships to have someone cook for them, freeing up time to socialize in pursuit of bolstering their social standing. But women also benefited from the men's protection, safeguarding food from thieves. And so kind of leaving a state of anarchy and becoming more of a social contract and a family in a group-oriented social structure. And so this is stretching past a little bit past the scientific and the hard data, and to kind of what helped humans in their communities to evolve from pure wild into a little bit more social structure. So this is cool. It's great postulations. Once again, it's kind of a tricky place to hang out in. But this is another direct quote from the book. It says, "To this day, cooking continues in every known human society. We are biologically adapted to cook food, and it's part of who we are and affects us in every way you can imagine, biologically, anatomically, and socially." So once again, this is from the Netflix show Cooked. It's a documentary, and I highly recommend it. We have a little bit of a link in here from it's from civileats.com, and it's just kind of a it will inspire you. That this show, it's a Netflix documentary that's worth your time. And so I really thought we needed to kind of put it out there as it's a neat idea about evolution that I had never even remotely considered.
And it's good. I like evolution. So good science segment, Chris.
Yeah,
if you want to make me happy, you just got to talk about evolution. We just do that for every science segment. Everything that we do has to relate to evolution now. That's your new goal.
We could talk about the Maillard reaction when you make your roast next time.
We could, because I actually have one in the freezer that I bought I'm getting ready to cook in my new stove. So
that's awesome. Well, that's pretty much what we had for this segment. This is there's a lot of hard and gritty ditty put in there, but if you look at the show, you can get a nice overreach. And then if you really want to get into the good stuff, you can take a look at the Harvard book, and maybe we point you in a good direction, and then maybe in the future we'll have like a cooking episode where we butcher something, where we butcher some poor piece of meat with a bunch of alcohol, and we have a result that we'll take photos of or something for the audience.
There you go. We could do that, or we'll record it in my new house. I have all the stupid webcams. I'll just install in there.
It's your security system. That's what we'll call it.
Thank you all so much for sticking around through this segment, evolution and food, and even some hints at a future segment for cooking. So we'll be right back with more Cellar Door Skeptics as we close the show out talking about Apple and the FBI. We'll be right back, everyone.
This is Trav Mamone, host of the By Any Means podcast, and you're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics. Prepare for the revolution. We have cookies.
For more information, make sure you check out cellardoorskeptics.com. It has all the latest information, blogs, pictures, thoughts, rants, and of course, our infamous podcast. Make sure you check us out, cellardoorskeptics.com, for all your latest info. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and maybe even Google+. Remember, follow us to help support the show. Just by sharing one link can help bring new audiences our hideous voices. Now, back to the show.
the show.
Welcome back to Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you so much for sticking around for another amazing episode. We've talked about International Women's Day, evolution and food, the Bernie Sanders rally, why Chris Hanna is now going to vote for Hillary Clinton, and we are now going to talk about the case with Apple and the FBI. So for those of you who haven't been following the media lately, and I'll be honest, I was one of them until about halfway through last month, I had no idea this was a thing. I didn't know the FBI had decided they wanted to go to Apple and ask them for what we would call a backdoor process to get into the phone. And it all stems from that horrible shooting in California, where there was a mass shooting at a home, and they went on a high-speed chase, and now they've got an Apple phone, and they want to basically break in because they want to be able to get in and find out what they had on that phone, if it's incriminating and can help them with their terrorist charges.
Yeah, the San Bernardino shooting is the one that we're talking about. Those guys, well, the male and the female, they want to essentially dive into those phones to try to catch those terrorist links, because not all of us know how to just completely wipe our systems. We all leave trails on the internet, and they're trying to get into that. But the way in which they're trying to do it is what's become the big deal. The Fed is trying to get into this phone, but there are things in play in the Apple phones that after you try the password enough times, I mean, I believe this is consistent with almost all mobile phones now, or smartphones, there's a protection. Once you set up a password, if you try enough times, it'll self-destruct. It's like the notes and letters in like the Mission Impossible, or what was the Doctor cartoon where the guy had all the Inspector Gadget, where the thing always exploded. But like the phones don't exactly explode, but they essentially remove everything from them. They erase themselves to protect your information in case your phone ever gets stolen, which I don't see any reason why that's a bad thing. But what it's doing is impeding the investigation, apparently, because Apple doesn't want to just give the FBI some kind of special key. So that's kind of where the conversation started, and that's what I had heard when it first came out. Because I've known that they've had these phones since the shooting. They've had them for a while, but the letter from Cook and Apple is where it all went. It just really shot off into the stratosphere as far as public opinion and debate.
Yeah. And there, I found the original article from a gentleman named James Comey. And this article basically talks about the litigation. They talk about why he at the FBI wants this backdoor key. And he says the legal issue is actually quite narrow. The relief that we seek is limited, and its value increasingly obsolete because technology continues to evolve. We simply want a chance, with a search warrant, to try and guess the terrorist passcode without the phone essentially self-destructing. So, like you said earlier, once you enter the passcode too many times, it erases the phone. You have to upload it from the iCloud. It's kind of an ingenious thing. And they basically want a free pass to say, well, it's not. They can guess it as many times as they want. My guess is they want to hook it up to some computer that will run a master key and will run all the number gamuts until it unlocks it. That's my guess is what they want. Which, to a point, if they have the search warrant, what's to say that the phone becomes property or not property of the government? And I guess I don't know a lot about search warrants. I really don't. This does feel very invasive to me. This seems like a very, very invasive procedure they want to do. And that's my biggest concern is where does a search warrant end? So, Chris, do you know anything about search warrants? Do you know how they work? What do they allow? Anything like that?
All I know is that what it basically does is it removes your ability to refuse on a constitutional grounds the government from looking at your stuff, your information, your data, your phones, all that kind of stuff. It's opened when a search warrant is given from a judge for them to investigate you on a particular. There are different levels of search warrants as far as I know, but then they're really only allowed to search for what's specifically on that warrant. And so if they happen to find, if they're looking through your house for stolen property and they find some drugs, well, there are some weird technicalities that's not what they're looking for, and so sometimes those things aren't admissible and a variety of other things. But in this case particularly, it's interesting because you get a search warrant. The judge says, okay, I give you the right to open this person's phone if you can get into it. And further into that quotation that you gave a little bit ago, the FBI director Comey also says that that's it. That's all they wanted was to get into it without it self-destructing. They don't want to break anyone's encryption or set a master key loose on the land. And this is where there's a little bit of a disconnect. Is to enforce the warrant. Obviously, they need to get into the phone. But people on the FBI side, they keep saying that they don't want a master key that can get into every iPhone and that they'll finally have access to, because as far as I know, it doesn't exist yet. Like Apple didn't create a master key to get into all their phones. That's otherwise, because when you do that, there's a hole there and it's easy to hack into, or easier. But the other side, the people who like the Apple and everybody, they're saying that the FBI is asking them for this backdoor or for them to make a backdoor master key. And so the warrant it's kind of like a side note here, because yes, these people were shooting suspects, or they were actually shot while they were being the horrible criminals that they are. Well, so we're not questioning whether or not the warrant's valid or that the government should be able to get into their phone. Like, I think they should. It's just the way in which they're going to get into their phone is what I have a problem with, because I don't think anybody should have a key like this to get into these phones.
Before we go too far, though, let's talk about search warrants, because to me that's one of the big things is what does our search warrant really entail us to? Does it give them free reign of everything? And basically what it says is that the magistrate or a court official issues an authorization to law enforcement officers to conduct a search of a person, location, or vehicle for evidence of a crime and to confiscate that evidence. So if there is evidence on the phone, shouldn't they have access or be able to access that on the phone? I mean, technically, according to what the law says, should they not technically be able to do that?
Well, that's the question. Is they should be able to. If that, I mean, the law has given them the right to get into that. But I guess it's the tool. The problem with the tool, it's with any great power comes great responsibility. Well, having a master key made for all, like, let's say this wasn't just a phone thing. This was a computer thing. Like, you have the master key. The Fed has the master key to get into every single Windows operated PC in the country. I wouldn't be comfortable with that if that Fed was asking for that. But they're not asking. I wouldn't. You know what I mean? Though. And so changing it away from the phone, and so it's into the computers is where I don't know.
But that's okay. But you have to go back to the base question of it. You have to go back to what is legally allowed and what is not. And so if it's legally allowed that they can get into the phone, then why can't Apple just de-lock that phone for them by the courts? Why does the FBI need to have a backdoor key or even an ability to just run numbers to unlock it? Why can't Apple just go, okay, I can unlock this, boom, it's done. Therefore,
I don't know
they
if
have
can.
the ability to do that.
I don't know if they can, because they've said that they don't have that master key. Like, they didn't make one. So they can't just go to every phone and be like, okay, well, this is the one we want to unlock, poof, and do it. I don't believe that's how they set up the system. Like, when you put your password on there, I'm pretty sure that it's encrypted, even to Cook, the Apple dude, the CEO or whatever. That's the thing. That's the big thing that I think they're talking about here with this.
But you could easily, though, he could just change the email address that the notification goes to, and they could switch it, right? I mean, they could just say, okay, and it's now going to go to Tim. He fixes the password to be some generic password of 66666 or 212.18.1 or some bullshit like that, right? He could do that.
If they could, then what they're doing is kind of douchebaggy, because I mean, if they could just reset the phone from I don't know, wherever they reset the phone, however they verify that kind of stuff, they should be able to do that. Have you ever had a phone reset? I'm not an Apple guy, so I don't know, but I would think that they would be able to reset these phones without losing everything on it.
Well, no, I've never had that. I'll be honest. I've never had a reset where they're able to just reset that password. No, it erases the whole phone. So it's not even a question.
And so my guess is that, like, well, you prove that you are you, and you have forgotten your password. Can Apple go like, okay, well, we know you are you, and this is your phone. we'll reset that so you can get into it. It doesn't seem like that would be too crazy of a thing, and I don't know why they haven't been able to do something like this, why it's come down to this, like, break through the encryption hacker key. It just seems like it's really, really gotten more complicated than it needs to get. It's like what you said, the warrant thing. Like, what did they do in the past when people had locked phones? It's like, oh, well, I guess we'll just never get into that phone? Or is it because this became this big media story that it's kind of taken on a life of its own?
And so let's read a little bit from the Apple letter. They sent out a customer letter, which is kind of what I saw because I'm an Apple customer. So I got the letter. It came up in my feed all over the place. So they talk about a couple of different things. And this is Tim Cook, the CEO of the whole company. He says there's a need for encryption. Apple wants to be among other companies to do everything in their power to protect the personal information. And Apple deeply is committed to safeguarding that data. So that's how they begin. They said they're shocked and outraged by the acts of terrorism in the San Bernardino case in December. They mourn the loss of life. When the FBI has requested that's in our position, we have provided it. Apple complies with valid subpoenas and search warrants, as we have in the San Bernardino case. We have also made Apple engineers available to advise the FBI, and we've offered our best ideas on a number of investigation options at their disposal. We have a great respect for the professionals at the FBI, and we believe their intentions are good. Up to this point, we have done everything within our power and within the law to help them. But now the U.S. government has asked us something we simply do not have, and something we consider too dangerous to create. They have asked us to build a backdoor to the iPhone. Specifically, the FBI wants us to make a new version of the iPhone OS, circumventing several important security features, and install it on an iPhone recovered during the investigation. In the wrong hands, this software, which does not exist today, would have the potential to unlock any iPhone in any person's possession. The FBI may use different words to describe the tool, but make no mistake. Building a version of iOS that bypasses security in this way would undeniably create a backdoor. And while the government may argue that its use would be limited to this case, there's no guarantee of that control.
Yeah, this is the issue, is the Fed's saying they're not asking for that. And Cook is saying they are asking for that. And I don't trust either of them because, let's say, Apple does have a bit of a sketchy record when it comes to some of its tax filings and the things that it's done. It's one of the biggest companies in the world. And the Fed, let's just sit there, just this giant messy thing when it comes to the FBI and Homeland Security. And they've lied before, they'll lie again. I'm kind of skeptical of what they're both saying. And so what that did was that drove me into a couple of different other conversations with friends and people and IT people. And it naturally brought up John McAfee. And I know I talked to you a little bit about this. It gets pretty technical. I guess, really, is there anything else that you wanted to go through with Cook's letter first before we talk about some of the hardware stuff?
Yes. Yeah, because before we get into that part of it, he goes at the very end, and he claims it's going to set a dangerous precedent. He's talking about that instead of using legislative action through Congress, the FBI is proposing an unprecedented use of the All Writs Act of 1789 to justify an expansion of authority. The government would have us remove security features and add new capabilities to the OS, allowing a passcode to be inputted electronically. This would make it easier to unlock an iPhone by brute force, trying thousands or millions of combinations, which is exactly what I said earlier. The implications of this are very chilling, and he kind of gets a little dramatic here. He says then they could, build a surveillance system and require them to intercept messages, financial records, health records, and to a point he's right. I mean, that would be pretty horrible.
It sounds like the thing in Batman when Lucius Fox, I think it was, Morgan Freeman's character says, like, I will not be here when this thing exists, because Batman creates the sonar cell phone thing that can track anybody and everybody in Gotham, just because he essentially hacks everyone's phones. I mean, that like, I think that's what it sounds like. He's thinking that he turned all the cell phones and everything into this massive surveillance network. That is kind of scary.
And it is. And, you know, some of me thinks, like you said earlier, there's a little bit of pushback on both sides. And if the government can just subpoena them to unlock it, and they could just unlock it without giving them a back door, then it seems very illogical that they would try and claim it's just a one-time thing. That's what they're trying to claim. They are literally trying to say this is a one-time use. We don't need it any longer than one time.
Yeah, we promise we'll just throw it in the garbage can when we're done. Sure, whatever you say, FBI. I don't believe you at all. Here's a master key that can get into any phone, any iPhone that's in your possession when it comes to terrorists and anybody else that you capture, or any evidence that you collect. We expect you to remove to get rid of that make your life easier and make it much faster for gathering that kind of info. I don't think the FBI could get rid of that. It's too useful of a tool. That's one of the things why I don't trust them.
And there's another gentleman from Apple that goes on and he talks about in the Washington Post, and his name is Craig Fenderini, and I'm probably butchering his word, and he's the senior vice president of software engineering at Apple, and he kind of reiterates the same thing. He says hackers have recently breached defenses in retail chains and even the federal government, making off with credit card, social security, fingerprint information for millions of people. And he's saying if this technology got out, it could actually be worse than a terrorist killing people and us not being able to convict them of that specific terrorism. That this could literally jeopardize hundreds and upon millions of people's security and of that information. And can you imagine a master criminal, right? You talked about Batman. What if Batman turned rogue all of a sudden, and then he literally did the same thing, and he like hacked all these phones and had everybody's information? Can you imagine how much money you could extract and withdraw within, you know, a very short time frame? You could build your own empire.
Oh yeah,
almost instantaneously.
Yeah,
there's so that's why they go on
things.
to say it's disappointing.
There's so many scary things that could happen on this, which that's the reason why I'm essentially against making this fancy door. I'm against this idea, and until I don't know why the Fed is trying to stretch and gain more power. Like, it seems like they could just use the channels they've used in the past to get into these phones as they've always done. Because I know they've been able to get into Apple phones in the past. Like, Apple didn't just make this new iOS that is 10 times, 100 times better than it used to be. Like, yeah, it's got more encryption, but I'm going to guess that the password encryption was bypassable using some kind of means that, let's say your phone, is busted and you need to reset it, like we said earlier. Like, they have to be able to do something like that. So I don't know what the change is, why the Fed is trying to reach so much further that it's causing everyone to push back like this.
And before we move too farther into that, let's look at one more quick thing. You're right. If they could get into it, why do they need this back door? They don't need the back door. Then they're just using it as a way to kind of control. But is this a slippery slope? I mean, we have to look at that. Are we walking down a slippery slope by saying, well, the government wants this, therefore this, and this are going to happen? It's a slippery slope argument. It really is. But it's the same thing on the other side. You can look at it both ways. So how do you predict and define which one is truly a slippery slope and where we're going to go from here? And I think you presented a video by a gentleman I believe is coked out of his mind personally.
John McAfee is
definitely an energetic guy.
Yeah, he is the presidential candidate for the Libertarian Party. McAfee is a completely wild, crazy. He's like Richard Branson from Virgin mega corporations, but like if he had like Scarface mixed in there. Like, the guy's just wild and nuts, but he's funny, and like he started the McAfee antivirus stuff and sold it all, and then they drove it into the ground, and he hates it and makes fun of it all the time. But the guy is really, really up in the hacking world. And I think it's called DEF CON or HackCon. There's a couple of different like hacking conferences, and they have all of these people who they go and they show all the new tricks in the hacking community to break into these machines, and that's what they are. These are machines. And in the video that I saw, essentially he says, you can break into any phone if you have the actual phone in your hand. The way that you can extract the information on a chipset, on hardware, you can make a copy of it, and then you can go into the machine language. Because the very first thing that a phone is going to be doing when you turn it on, it's going to say, okay, I need an input from the keypad. and depending on what numbers are punched into that keypad, does it match with the one that's saved as the good one? Well, if you get into a machine and you make a copy so you can tinker with it and mess with it, you can go into the languages, the zeros and the ones. You can find that right key, that right combination, and you can get into that phone. And he says that he can do it in 30 minutes. He told the FBI he'd do it in 3 hours, but he said that he really only needs 30 minutes. You need compilers, you need a computer engineer, you need people who know hardware and really, really technical super experts, which is something that of a resource that I would expect the FBI to have. And so I wager what he's saying is correct, that the FBI is trying to do something else with this. And so I asked the godless engineer, and I said, "Hey man, you're an IT guy, you're a computer scientist. What do you think? Is this legit, or is McAfee just talking out of his ass?" And he said, "No, this is real as far as he can tell." And he said that he hadn't tried it, or he might not be able to do it, but he said theoretically this should not be a problem. You should be able to use the hardware like that. And you said you talked to someone too, and they said, "Yeah, sounds about right," or what?
Yes. I have a friend that works for an organization. I guess I'll just keep his name private. But him and I talk about these kind of things all the time because they're interesting to him. It's his world, and he says the nuances of what Cokehead McPhee talked about, where there's a little bit more to it than that. He's not exactly right that 30 minutes, maybe somebody that knows what they're doing, blah, 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 blah. 30 minutes, he says, but there's more to it than that. Is it possible? Yes. Do you need a passcode? No. Would it take them probably just as long to, run a numbers check if they had their back door to having an expert hack it? He says it'd be about the same time. He says that's why he's very skeptical of the FBI too, because why would they need that? Where do they get off on that? And if we look at what happened after 2001 with the terrorist attack, right, it almost feels like the same thing. What did Bush push?
Well, the whole
what did
country,
they enact?
The whole country was scared. Everybody was afraid. They used that fear tactic to kind of move a bunch of really, really bad things in through legislation. And I hope this isn't some kind of chess game that the FBI has concocted, but it's with fear of sounding like a conspiracy theorist. You never know anymore. There's so much stuff on the internet that I just try to keep it as straight as I can. When it's something like this, I'm skeptical that the FBI is pure and ethical in all their motives here. But I'm also skeptical that Cook isn't trying to make himself out to be this shining white knight down there to save everyone and obviously benefit his company's image as being the one protecting his customers. So there's all kinds of layers to this. And if the FBI can break into this stuff within the hardware, like the hackers say that they can do, then there's a few unknown variables that make me uncomfortable, which is why I'm against the FBI getting some kind of magic key. But I would really like to know the whole story from Cook as opposed to what he's spun it.
And I think, at this point, they're probably never going to know. It's never going to let on. We're going to have this same discussion over and over again. All I know on my side of the thing is that I don't want them into my phone. And I don't even have anything to hide, but they don't need to be monitoring me. We shouldn't live in a police state. And I think that what's happened is, as technology has evolved, they're smarter. They're smarter than probably the average consumer, and they're going, "Hey, how can we get an edge up on people?" I mean, think about it. If you're at a traffic stop, right, and they smell marijuana, and they're like, "Oh, here, let me unlock your phone. Oh, hey, it looks like you subscribe to all these marijuana sites privately. Guess what? I bet you're smoking pot. Therefore, we got reasonable evidence. Search the car. Boom. Next thing you know, somebody's going to jail for pot. Maybe that won't happen next year because everybody should go vote to legalize weed in Michigan in 2016. But again, that's another thing. But just think about it. That could escalate. It doesn't have to just be that. That just probably would be the most common thing. And where are we going to go? What are we going to do? Or do we want to live in, Orwellian society? Do we want people like Trump to be able to dictate what we can keep private, what we can't?
It's part of the social contract. Is we give up our freedoms, some of our freedoms, to get protected. but we have to be involved in the system back and forth. Like, we have to be actively involved. There'll be little gives and takes. We give up a little bit more freedom, and maybe they'll protect us a little bit more. And maybe we're not comfortable with giving up that much, so we take some of it back. And that there is no one answer for this. It needs to be malleable and adjustable. It needs to be able to evolve with the times. So we're using a law from the 1700s to try to figure out how we're going to be able to get into iPhones today. Like, there's so many things that we can't just pick one that's going to be perfect, but we definitely need to work with it and try to find the right answer. But everyone's got to be involved and pay attention to what's happening here, because like you said, you don't want the government in your phone. Well, how involved are you going to be to try to keep them out of your phone? Or are you just going to sit back and just let them do whatever they want?
And as we wrap the segment up, I challenge the listeners to look at that. Where do you want to be? Who do you want to be? How much privacy do you want to give up? Is there a risk to it? Everybody needs to go out and do that. And I think if and we've been harping on the politics a lot lately. We really have gone very off the rails on the political spectrum. But you have to stop and think, and you have to stop and look at why. Where are we going to get change from? We aren't going to get change by just yelling and screaming, by posting things on Facebook, by tweeting about it. We're not just going to get change there. We got to change the people in power. We got to change the people making these decisions. We got to change. We got to put somebody out there who's willing to challenge the establishment, who's willing to say, hey, there's no reason for us to be this scared of things. Fear is a driving factor here. Let's stop with the fear, analyze the logical statistics, and make decisions from there. Because if we continue down this path, if we continue to go where we're headed with this, and we give the government complete unlimited access, all we're going to do is turn around, and we're going to find ourselves in an authoritarian nightmare. And I know there's going to be a lot of people that probably go, well, you're a socialist. You want the complete government interaction, blah, 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 blah. You're voting for Bernie, and Bernie's going to do this. And I'm saying is, but Bernie's not for this stuff. He's not for unlimited access by the government to search your houses, to do these things. He voted against the Patriot Act. He's saying he did. And he's here to tell people, like any other good candidate should do, that, hey, there's got to be a balance. The government should get some access. But at some point, we got to say enough is enough. And we can only do that by going out and voting. So I hope on this election Tuesday here in Michigan that y'all have gone out and voted. Because I know I have. And I know Chris has. And I know that by voting, we can change America. This has been another episode of Cellar Door Skeptics. Please stay tuned next week as we come back to you with a special guest. We have a guest next week. His name is Trav Mamone from By Any Means Podcast. We're going to talk about why he's bisexual, why we need to bring a little bit more awareness to it. We're going to also talk about Middle East air quality and if it's getting better or it's getting worse. We'll have a couple more crazy shit Chris says segments coming up this month. And we're also going to interview somebody that works at NASA. So make sure you click the like button here on Spreaker, subscribe, download us on iTunes, sponsor us on Patreon, and for God's sakes, help Chris get a new haircut next month. Thank you so much, and have a great night, everyone. And remember, prepare yourself for the revolution.
You've been listening to a presentation of Cellar Door Skeptics. Check us out on Spreaker, cellardoorskeptics.com.